Thank you all for listening and watching my videos. Please subscribe and like my channel Master Coolits. Hoping that you will not skip my ads. It's a big help for me by not skipping it. Thank you so much. Dragon Shadow. The Rise.
Zayn could no longer contain his overwhelming fury. The thunder and lightning surrounding his body continued to surge outward with increasing intensity. A howling, powerful wind swept through the area, ruthlessly upending everything in its destructive path. The intense, palpable killing intent gathered behind him, forming an imposing, shadow-like black curtain. Otto blanched with unmistakable fright as witnessed this terrifying display of power.
Zayn's strength has actually become so incredibly strong, it's almost unbelievable.
Without a word of blame, Zayn gently helped Otto to his feet and carefully sat him down in the nearby room. He then produced a small, ornate bottle filled with pills. Otto had courageously sacrificed his arm in a desperate attempt to save Amara. He had truly done everything within his power to protect her.
Don't worry yourself any further, my friend. I'll save Amara. Please focus on your recovery first. These potent medicinal pills here can significantly strengthen both your foundation and your spirit.
I'm utterly ashamed of my failure, Zayn. I couldn't protect her.
Otto shook his head dejectedly and let out a heavy sigh. Knowing full well what Zayn was planning to do next, he immediately cautioned him with genuine concern.
Please be extremely careful, Zayn. The Martell family has grown incredibly powerful now, and the Broken Fang Gang is even more formidable. Don't rashly fall into their carefully laid trap.
Zayn nodded solemnly, acknowledging Otto's warning.
Follow me closely, Elemental. We have some undeserving lives to reap.
The loyal panther obediently trailed behind them. The man and his beast walked purposefully down the street. Terrified pedestrians hastily made way for them, cowering in fear. Even the intimidating aura emitted from Zayn's body caused them to feel suffocated and paralyzed with dread. Ominous, dark clouds gathered in the sky from all directions, thunder crashing down non-stop. They pressed down heavily, as if a great, unavoidable disaster was imminently forthcoming. Outside the ornate gates of the Martell family's mansion, there were numerous lanterns and ribbons hanging in bright red stripes, a stark embodiment of misplaced festivity. A cold, merciless light flitted through Zayn's narrowed eyes as he stood imposingly outside the main door. He mockingly surveyed the inappropriately celebratory sight before him.
After forcibly taking Amara away, they dared to plaster the mansion with these garish decorations. This is truly a sick joke.
The dragon-blood sword in his hand suddenly swung forward with blinding speed. A cold, lethal sword radiance came slicing through the air and effortlessly cut the red flower garland into two neat pieces. The attack was so overwhelmingly strong that even the ancient, sturdy plaque of the Martell family cracked ominously. The debris fell thunderously to the ground, and the loud, reverberating noise immediately attracted the attention of the few guards at the body-tempering level inside the mansion grounds. The moment they laid eyes on the imposing figure of Zayn, the middle-aged man who appeared to be their leader was momentarily stunned before quickly regaining his composure and reacting with hostility.
Zayn, why have you dared to return here? You have already been permanently expelled from the Martell family and do not belong with us any longer. How dare you make trouble at the Martell family estate today? You're better off dead, you ungrateful wretch. Men, finish him off immediately. Show no mercy.
With the leader's barked order, four menacing individuals clad in nondescript gray clothes behind him yelled fiercely and rushed towards Zayn with murderous intent. A flurry of deadly fist shadows and powerful palm force came hurtling straight at his face. But Zayn's sword light flashed with blinding speed. One precise, devastating strike. All four attackers toppled lifelessly to the ground, their blood spurting out like macabre fountains.
Foundation level? It can't be!
The man's knees buckled uncontrollably after witnessing Zayn's true, terrifying strength. He directly flopped down ungracefully on the ground, and all thoughts of resistance instantly evaporated from his mind.
You killed members of the dreaded Broken Fang gang? They will never let you go. You've sealed your own fate.
However, just as his trembling voice fell, Zayn's toes pressed firmly on the ground, and the dragon blood sword directly pierced through the man's exposed throat with unerring accuracy.
The despicable traitors of the Martell family are not qualified to continue living. Today, I'll thoroughly weed out all the contemptible dirtbags in the family to honor my ancestors.
The moment he purposefully stepped through the imposing gate of the Martell mansion, the violent commotion he had deliberately caused had already alerted the high-level figures lurking inside. Immediately, more than a dozen guards at the peak of the 9th stage of body tempering ran out of the grand hall, brandishing an array of heavy, menacing weapons. One of them, a man of imposing stature, wore a long blue robe and appeared to be over 50 years old. His cultivation level was impressively at the 3rd stage of the foundation level. The other notable figure was a man in his early 30s, half of his face adorned with intricate, intimidating tattoos. His cultivation, while not as advanced as his older companion, had reached the peak of the 2nd stage of the foundation level. The moment the tattooed man caught sight of the intense flames surrounding Zayn's body, he hesitated to act rashly. Instead, he turned to the man beside him and said with a mixture of caution and urgency,
"Kneel. We must combine our strengths against this foe. This Zayn is extraordinarily powerful. We absolutely cannot afford to underestimate him."
After uttering these words of warning, the two of them leapt into action with violent determination. Their hands became shrouded in various colors of dazzling light, their intent clear: to end Zayn's life as swiftly as possible. However, Zayn's mouth moved ever so slightly, curling into a cold, mocking smile. His voice dripped with disdain as he spoke.
How has life been treating you, dear Uncle Neil? How utterly brazen of you to collude with the worthless scum of the Broken Fang gang to bring harm to the Martell family. Elemental, show them no mercy.
Without warning, a strange black shadow flashed forward at an almost incomprehensible speed, sweeping towards the unsuspecting Neil. In the blink of an eye, a fierce, howling wind roared through the area. As the black shadow landed with deadly precision, its true form finally became clear to all present. To the horror of onlookers, the massive panther now stood triumphantly, clamping between its powerful jaws the lifeless corpse of Neil.
What? This can't be happening.
The tattooed man, upon witnessing the gruesome scene before him, turned deathly pale with indescribable fright. He had never, in his wildest nightmares, expected that a mere demonic beast could effortlessly kill a cultivator of Neil's caliber in a single, devastating attack. Even more chilling was the realization that he hadn't even heard the man utter a single scream.
One fatal blow! It took just one fatal blow to end him.
The tattooed man, overcome with shock and terror, abruptly stopped moving. He didn't dare to take even a single step forward. His heart was beating so wildly that it felt as if it might burst from his chest at any moment.
Please, stop. Let's talk this over rationally. After all, we are also members of the clan. Why must we resort to violence? Why don't we sit down calmly and discuss?
Without hesitation, Zayn raised his gleaming sword and slashed it forcefully across the air. The cold, deadly energy instantly froze the unfortunate opponent into a macabre ice sculpture, which was then mercilessly cut into 2 clean pieces. Perhaps the elder would never have imagined, even in his final moments, that this would be his gruesome fate. Zayn, his fury now reaching a boiling point, looked around from the corner of his eyes. His gaze fell upon the remaining people who were still aiming their weapons at him. though with considerably less confidence than before. He issued a commanding order to them.
Drop your weapons immediately and swear to abandon your evil ways, and I shall mercifully spare your lives for the sake of our past connections.
Those people, utterly terrified by the display of power they had just witnessed, immediately looked at each other with a mixture of fear and resignation. Without further hesitation, they rid themselves of the weapons in their trembling hands. The terrifying strength that Zayn had just displayed was at such an inconceivably high level. He had been able to kill even the formidable Neil in an instant. How could they possibly hope to be worthy opponents against such overwhelming power? Moreover, if truth be told, they were not truly willing to be the guards of Neil in the first place. They had been coerced and forced into this role against their will. Deep down, they were even a little relieved and secretly happy to see Zayn carrying out this act of retribution.
Now, I demand answers. Where are Lyle and the rest of the Broken Fang gang at this moment? How many traitors have infiltrated the ranks of the Martell family?
Lyle and the majority of the Broken Fang gang are currently stationed at the mining vein located in the western part of the city. Most of the gang members are concentrated there, with only Neil being tasked with guarding this particular location.
Do you have knowledge of the whereabouts of a woman called Amara, who was unjustly captured by your group? Lead me to her immediately.
Zayn's tone was extremely cold and unforgiving, laced with an unmistakable hint of deadly intent. The leader of the guards, recognizing the gravity of the situation, did not dare to resist or attempt to hide any information. He immediately agreed and began to walk ahead, leading the way. Zayn, being intimately familiar with the layout and environment of the Martell mansion from his years growing up there, followed closely behind the leader of the guards. They walked along winding paths that turned left and then right, navigating the complex layout of the estate. Soon, they passed through the expansive backyard garden. Finally, they arrived in front of what appeared to be an unassuming, ordinary building.
Here? This appears to be nothing more than a simple woodshed. Is this some kind of deception?
No, you misunderstand. This is actually Lyle's secret dungeon. All those who dared to resist him or pose a threat to his plans were swiftly arrested and imprisoned in this hidden dungeon by Lyle's orders. Miss Amara is also being held captive inside.
Upon hearing this revelation, Zayn's expression immediately darkened with a mixture of rage and concern. He clenched his fist tightly, his knuckles turning white from the pressure. The killing intent in his eyes grew increasingly intense, threatening to overwhelm him. The innocuous woodshed that stood before him was clearly dark and damp, and Zayn could only imagine how much worse the hidden dungeon beneath must be. Dirty, smelly, and utterly inhospitable. The thought of gentle Amara being forced to endure such horrendous conditions for even a single day filled him with unbridled fury.
Elemental, guard this entrance with your life, without my explicit permission. Anyone who dares to attempt breaking in, kill them all without hesitation.
In response to its master's command, Elemental let out a long, haunting cry. The fearsome beast released an overbearing pressure unique to high-level demonic creatures, causing the air around them to grow heavy and oppressive. As this terrifying aura settled over the area, Zayn steeled himself, preparing to face whatever horrors and challenges might await him inside the dungeon's depths. On the rough wooden floor of the woodshed was a dark and narrow passage leading deep underground. Zayn pushed away the accumulated litter and debris piled up at the entrance and cautiously entered the damp passageway. The dim, oppressive environment did not significantly hinder his enhanced spirit eyes. The faint but persistent squeaking of unseen mice punctuated his near-silent footsteps as he traveled deeper down the winding tunnel. At the end of the passage, he discovered not just one, but dozens of dark, forbidding cells. The people trapped inside were all in tattered rags and utterly wretched conditions. Upon sensing someone approaching, they all turned to stare vigilantly, their gazes a mixture of fear, and desperate hope. Zayn could perceive that these poor souls were all severely injured, their eyes empty and devoid of life. To his growing horror, Zayn realized he could even recognize some of these pitiful figures. However, if his memory served him correctly, they were originally Lyle's loyal minions and supporters. He surmised they must have been locked up here because of some disagreement or perceived betrayal.
Please, I beg you, let me out. Let me out of this hell.
End my suffering. Kill me now.
Ghostly, heart-wrenching moans bounced off the damp stone walls. Zayn felt intense goosebumps rise all over his body as he struggled to maintain his composure. Steeling himself, he walked straight forward, finally reaching the very end of the prison where there stood a solitary, heavily fortified cell. Inside, he could make out the form of a young woman dressed in tattered clothes. There were countless holes in her once fine garments, now covered in dried blood.
Amara! Amara, can you hear me? Please wake up!
Zayn noticed Amara's hands and feet were cruelly tied to a menacing steel frame. Zayn wasted no time in yanking off the cell door and cutting the heavy chain to free her.
Open your eyes. Please!
Suddenly she opened her eyes ever so slightly and saw Zayn standing before her. A long-lost luster appeared in her previously lifeless eyes.
Zayn, it's really you.
It's all right. You're safe now. I swear I'll hunt down and kill all those who dared to torture you.
There are others.
She feebly pointed at the adjacent cell next door. Zayn looked around and saw an old man with white hair inside. The elderly prisoner approached the cell door and looked at them blankly. Caught completely by surprise at seeing Zayn, he blurted out,
"Are you Zayn, Ezekiel's son?"
Zayn was momentarily startled. After observing the old man's features, he was shocked to his core as realization dawned.
Uncle Lennon? Is it really you?
The old man standing before him was indeed Lennon Martell. When Zayn's father was still part of the Martell family, he and Lennon had been the very best of friends. Lennon had always been kind to Zayn and his family. During that period, it was not the treacherous Lyle who was the head of the family, but the kind-hearted Lennon. However, Lennon had disappeared inexplicably a few years ago, as if he had simply evaporated from the face of the earth. At that time, Zayn was still quite young and had long since pushed the memory of his uncle to the recesses of his mind. If he had not encountered him here in this nightmarish dungeon, he might never have been able to recall the man's existence.
"Yes, my dear boy, it's me."
He spoke in a hoarse, cracked voice with a few glistening drops of tears forming in the corners of his weary eyes. He was overwhelmed with emotion at this unexpected reunion. Zayn swiftly cut through the chains binding Lennon's prison door and released the old man. As he helped Lennon to his feet, Zayn urgently asked what had transpired to lead to this dire situation. After an emotional conversation that seemed to last an eternity, he finally understood the full, horrifying scope of what had occurred. It turned out that Lennon had not simply disappeared all those years ago as everyone believed. Instead, he had been cruelly trapped here because Lyle wanted to usurp his position as the head of the family. Both Amara and Lennon were extremely weak from their ordeals, so Zayn wasted no time in sending them to the relative safety of the Treasure Emporium. He also requested Otto to tend to their injuries and nurse them back to health. Then, filled with righteous fury, he mounted his loyal elemental panther and set off at great speed towards the Martell family mine located on the western outskirts of the city. The Martell family possessed two mining veins. One was situated on the eastern frontier, while the other lay in the west. The western mine vein was particularly rich with a rare and valuable kind of ore known as dark bloodstone. This unique ore was very peculiar and didn't have much practical use for cultivators at the foundation level. However, for those still at the body tempering level, the trace amounts of potent blood energy contained within the dark bloodstone could significantly strengthen one's physical body. If this powerful blood energy was carefully extracted and utilized over many years, it could even achieve the remarkable effect of essentially being reborn into a stronger form. Of course, it was important to note that the quality of the dark bloodstones found in the western outskirts of the city was not of the highest grade, so the effect, while still significant, was not as potent as it could potentially be with purer samples. The valuable vein lay hidden beneath a massive stone pit, its surface covered with all manner of strange and colorful rocks that concealed its true worth from casual observers. At that moment, a large group of people was toiling relentlessly in the stone pit of the mine, working their hands to the bone. In the middle of this bustling activity, two figures sat comfortably under a tent, enjoying tea and pastries. The leader, easily identifiable by his white hair and face lined with wrinkles, was none other than Lyle, the current head of the Martell family. Sitting across from him was a man with shocking, demonic green hair and completely white, pupilless eyes. That man was the infamous boss of the Broken Fang Gang, Vincent Tanaka. From his vantage point on a dune some 300 meters away from the mining vein, Zayn could observe every detail of the scene before him, thanks to his enhanced spirit eyes.
What exactly are they so desperately digging for?
He recalled the crucial information he had gleaned from Lennon. The real reason behind the Broken Fang Gang's cooperation with the Martell family was their intense interest in something mysterious buried deep under the vein. To unearth this coveted item, Lyle had relentlessly sent people to dig, day in and day out. This frantic excavation had been ongoing for at least a month now. Zayn couldn't help but feel that something significant might be unearthed very soon.
Although I'm also curious about what's hidden underneath, I have a more pressing matter at hand: avenging Amara.
Without warning, wild winds suddenly descended upon the mine, as if nature itself was responding to Zayn's resolve. With grim determination, Zayn took out the purplish gold bow and a matching arrow. He immediately called upon his iron body. With the combined might of 9 bulls and 1 tiger coursing through him, he pilled the bow back by half its full draw. The arrow emitted a piercing sound as it flew through the air at incredible speed. It moved as fast as a bolt of lightning. With the unstoppable momentum of rolling storm clouds, it directly and mercilessly spiked through Vincent's shoulder.
Ah! Who is it? Come out, you coward!
Witnessing this shocking scene unfold before his eyes, Lyle was instantly scared out of his wits, all color draining from his face. He quickly sprang to his feet, his eyes darting wildly as he looked around in panic. To their growing alarm, there appeared to be no one visible around the mine. This sudden, violent commotion also alerted the more than 30 skilled martial practitioners, all at various stages between the 2nd and 4th levels of the foundation level, who had been strategically stationed there by the Broken Fang Gang. They swiftly moved to protectively cover their injured boss, forming a defensive circle around him.
You have violated the sacred ethics of martial arts by launching a sneak attack on me. Don't conceal yourself if you're truly a hero. Face me like a real warrior.
Vincent could barely stand upright, even with the support of his loyal subordinates. The vital energy coursing through his body was severely damaged, and he found himself unable to condense it into a protective orb. To make matters worse, the arrow remained firmly lodged in his body. He was completely unable to pull it out in one attempt, as it had viciously penetrated through bone and tissue.
Coward, huh? Doesn't matter. They're all gonna die today anyway.
Zayn, still maintaining his position on the distant sand dune, snorted coldly at Vincent's words. However, his hands never ceased their relentless activity. This time, with even greater focus and determination, he drew the purplish gold bow to its absolute maximum capacity. In a breathtaking display of skill, 3 arrows shot out simultaneously from Zayn's bow, and the very air around them seemed to shatter with the force of their passage. In the blink of an eye, the deadly arrows mercilessly pierced through 3 unsuspecting members of the Broken Fang Gang. The 3 unfortunate victims keeled over one after another in quick succession. They died on the spot before they could even begin to comprehend what was happening to them.
Hurry up, you useless fools. Find out who is behind this cowardly assault.
Consumed by rage and pain, Vincent roared his commands to his subordinates. The deadly arrows continued to rain down upon them without mercy, and more of Vincent's men fell lifeless under their relentless assault.
Over there. I see him.
A voice suddenly cried out amidst the chaos. At last, someone had managed to spot Zayn's distant figure. Reacting with lightning speed, a burly man with a distinctive ponytail, appearing to be in his 40s, materialized in front of Zayn with an unnaturally swift body movement. He reached out menacingly with his claw-like hands, fixing Zayn with a murderous glare as he shouted coldly,
"You sneaking coward! You hid yourself and mercilessly killed so many of my brothers. I'm gonna send you to hell right now."
Without a moment's hesitation, Zayn immediately countered by throwing a devastatingly powerful punch. The attacking man's face instantly turned a sickly shade of livid gray. He involuntarily spat out a mouthful of blood and let out a miserable, agonized scream. The bones in his arm cracked loudly under the sheer, overwhelming force of Zayn's precisely delivered punch. A dozen fierce and fiendish foundation-level practitioners charged forward, brandishing heavy weapons such as long swords and giant spears. In an instant, multicolored vital energy exploded outward, enveloping fist shadows and saber light as they rained down mercilessly upon Zayn. The powerful attacks landed precisely on the top of Zayn's head and various parts of his body. Zayn's form immediately appeared to weaken. His body seized up and fell limply to the ground.
Well, well, isn't he a bit too weak for all the trouble he's caused?
Was that devastating arrow really shot by this punk?
It certainly doesn't look that way to me. We've been chasing a weakling.
One of them grew complacent. However, just as he was about to approach Zayn's seemingly lifeless corpse, it suddenly became distorted and illusionary.
By the gods, we've been enchanted. Let's get out of here before it's too late.
A cold, menacing shout came from above, freezing them in their tracks.
Thunder Spear!
Countless silver bolts of profound lightning were constantly sent flying, forming a bright, deadly thunder swamp in the void above their heads.
Art of sword drawing. Separation of vital energy.
Sharp, blinding sword light rushed past with incredible speed. One devastating strike. Zayn's powerful attack seriously injured everyone in its path. It even severed some of the unfortunate men cleanly into halves. Others were left with deep, bloody grooves on their chests that made people's hair stand on end. They all collapsed to the ground, their breath instantly snuffed out. Standing on the edge of the mine, Lyle's pupils kept shrinking in abject terror as he witnessed the carnage.
Why have you returned now, Zayn? Are you here to spoil my carefully laid plans once again?
The uncontrollable trembling of his body belied his attempt at a firm tone of voice. It had taken Zayn only a dozen breaths of time to utterly decimate most of the people there. He was far more powerful than Lyle had ever imagined possible.
You stupid oafs, help me! Attack him with everything you have!
He had initially attempted to rally the remaining members of the Broken Fang gang. However, after witnessing Zayn's overwhelmingly powerful display, any thoughts of rebellion had been thoroughly quelled. Realizing the futility of resistance, Lyle immediately turned and fled in abject horror.
Isn't it far too late to run now, you coward?
Zayn swiftly pulled on the purplish gold bow, and several beams of deadly light shot out with unerring accuracy. A horrible, unstoppable force was attached to each arrow and instantly smashed the remaining 3 people into unrecognizable mincemeat. At that moment, Lyle found himself in an utter state of despair. He could neither escape nor mount any kind of counterattack. He simply feigned aplomb, furrowing his brow, and then spoke in a haughty tone, trying to mask his fear.
You can't kill me, Zayn. You wouldn't dare.
And why is that?
Don't you care about that little maid in your family the most? She seems to be called Amara or something, doesn't she? If you don't want anything terrible to happen to her, you'll let me go right now.
Vincent, who lay seriously injured next to him, immediately reacted and said in a panicked voice,
Yes, he did incarcerate your people, but I swear I never knew about this. I also have absolutely nothing to do with the Martell family. You might as well...
Before Vincent could finish his desperate plea, an arrow flew over with blinding speed and directly blew up his head in a gruesome display. Lyle's heart was beating wildly, threatening to burst from his chest. His self-preservation instinct was raising every red flag possible, but he struggled to keep a straight face.
You can kill me if you must, but I promise you won't see another side of your precious Amara for the rest of your miserable life.
Zayn sneered coldly and pulled out another arrow from his quiver. He thought to himself with grim determination,
You truly think I don't know exactly what you're plotting, you snake?
He pulled the bowstring again, but this time only to a fifth of its potential power. The arrow whistled through the air and struck the joints of Lyle's legs with surgical precision, instantly making his legs go soft. In a heartbeat, Lyle dropped to his knees. His expression was pinched with agony as he screamed in pain. Two more arrows whistled through the air, piercing Lyle's shoulder with deadly accuracy and forcefully nailing him to the unyielding stone wall of the mine behind him. Given Lyle's current dire situation and severely diminished strength, he could do nothing but become Zayn's helpless plaything.
You can never kill me. Never.
His eyes were bloodshot with a mixture of pain and rage as he bellowed defiantly. Zayn slowly and deliberately walked to stand directly in front of the pinned Lyle. When he saw his enemy's miserable appearance before him, his heart swelled with a grim sense of satisfaction and justice.
Lyle, back then your son, Bram, and Freya plotted against me with your blessing. Later, they made me a pariah everywhere I went, and even repeatedly tried to assassinate me. But make no mistake, these are not the reasons why you will die by my hand today. Of all the countless mistakes you have committed, the gravest and most unforgivable is having crossed my absolute bottom line when you dared to touch my family and friends.
It was a moment of intense catharsis for him. Zayn's eyes were ablaze with righteous anger, and a cold, merciless light filled his gaze. A fierce, destructive energy that could annihilate everything in its path instantly enveloped the helpless Lyle. The condemned man felt the last line of defense in his heart collapse instantly, and he could no longer maintain his facade of bravado. His body kept convulsing uncontrollably with abject fear, and his heart turned to ice in his chest.
Do you already know everything? How is that possible?
Any last words before I end your miserable existence?
My last words, you say? If I want you to die along with me, will you agree to it? We can both perish here.
I'm afraid I can't oblige your final request.
Zayn stood unflinchingly before him, suddenly pulled back his bow with lightning speed, and aimed directly at Lyle's head with unwavering precision. In an instant, Lyle's brain exploded into a gruesome shower of fragments.
All of this long nightmare is finally over. But I still have a long, challenging way to go on my path.
With a determined, steely look in his eyes, he carefully put away the purplish gold arrow and strode purposefully towards the entrance of the mine. The marks on the rocks on the other side of the entrance were unmistakably new and fresh. It was glaringly obvious that this area had just been recently opened up.
I wonder what exactly that mysterious thing they were so fervently talking about could be. I might as well dig it out myself and give it a thorough examination.
Without hesitation, Zayn switched from the purplish gold arrow to the formidable dragon blood sword, and numerous overbearing sword lights flew out with devastating force.
The entire mine shook violently, and loose gravel kept falling ominously from the top of the excavated cavern. After half a day of intense, back-breaking labor, a narrow passage was finally opened up. At its very end, a bright red, pulsating blood spring suddenly appeared before Zayn's astonished eyes. The blood spring that now lay before him was so dark it was almost pitch black, and a potent, rusty stench of blood assaulted his nostrils mercilessly. It bore a striking resemblance to the dark bloodstone found elsewhere in the mine, but its quality was clearly several times higher and more potent.
Could this blood spring be what Lyle and the others had been so desperately searching for all this time?
Zayn was absolutely ecstatic at his discovery. Without a moment's hesitation, he immediately jumped headlong into the mysterious blood spring. Instantly, he felt an immense surge of blood energy course powerfully into his body.
Billy, you should also soak in this remarkable spring. Your illusion technique helped tremendously just now. If your energy is fully restored, you will definitely be able to exert even greater strength in the future.
Thank you for your kindness, Master.
The three-tailed spirit fox nodded appreciatively and gracefully jumped into the blood spring alongside Zayn. She swiftly transformed into the image of a curvy, alluring woman and began to practice deep meditation. Zayn couldn't help but watch her transformation and practice closely, momentarily mesmerized.
No, I absolutely must keep my cool and stay focused on the task at hand.
Stealing his resolve, he activated the powerful Dragon Annihilation art and skillfully guided the dense blood energy from the spring into his meridians. Slowly but surely, Zayn's body began to undergo a truly shocking metamorphosis. Deep within his elixir field, a brand new vital vein began to form at the very end of his existing network. Like a life-giving stream, the spring water slowly but steadily flowed into his newly opened vessel of origin. It extended from his elixir field all the way to his chest, ribs, arms, and finally reached his throat. With this final surge, he had triumphantly reached the 5th stage of the foundation level. Zayn's eyes snapped open, his face suffused with an expression of wild, unbridled joy.
The effect of this miraculous blood spring is even more potent than I could have possibly imagined. It actually allowed me to break through to the 5th stage in one fell swoop.
But even as he reveled in his achievement, he also keenly realized that his form of the Elder Wyvern had made an even greater contribution to this breakthrough. If it wasn't for the fact that the form had expertly absorbed and purified the raw energy from the blood spring, it would have been utterly impossible for him to break through so quickly and effortlessly. Glancing over, Zayn noticed that Billy, on the other side of the spring, had also experienced a remarkable recovery. She had swiftly advanced from the 2nd stage of the foundation level all the way to the 4th. Perhaps it was because her original cultivation level had been at the intermediate level that she was able to recover even faster than he had anticipated. For her, there seemed to be no bottleneck impeding her rapid progress. Zayn and Billy immersed themselves in the potent blood pool. It wasn't until 3 full hours later, when all the essence in the pool had been thoroughly absorbed, that they finally emerged. Thanks to this miraculous blood spring, Zayn had not only broken through to the 5th stage of the foundation level, but had even managed to stabilize himself firmly at the mid-5th stage. His entire body now pulsed with incredible power, as if it could burst forth at any moment, ready to unleash its full potential.
Billy, it's time for us to head back now.
He gently patted his shoulder, instantly transforming Billy back into her furry, 3-tailed spirit fox form. Without hesitation, she gracefully leaped onto his broad shoulder. Meanwhile, at the Treasure Emporium, Amara had allowed the attentive maids to carefully clean her up before resting comfortably on the soft bed. Fortunately, although she had suffered serious external injuries, there was no internal damage to her vital organs. Therefore, the healers assured him that it wouldn't take long for her to recover completely. At that moment, Amara slowly regained consciousness and carefully sat up in her bed. As her eyes focused on Zayn, sitting vigilantly by her bedside, she felt an overwhelming warmth billowing in her heart.
Zayn, you're really back? I can hardly believe my eyes. But tell me, how long do you intend to stay in Kintyre County this time?
It was painfully obvious that she was incredibly reluctant to part with Zayn again. They had been as close as true siblings for so many years. Moreover, after enduring such great pain and trauma recently, she desperately did not want Zayn to leave her side like this. In her mind, the more days he could stay, the better it would be for both of them. Zayn smiled gently, fully understanding and empathizing with Amara's complex feelings. After careful consideration, he finally spoke.
Amara? What would you think about the possibility of joining the prestigious Five Spirits sect alongside me?
Amara's previously lethargic eyes suddenly widened in utter disbelief, and her mouth fell slightly open in shock.
Yes, I'd love to, but...
The Five Spirits sect was universally regarded as a holy place for cultivation in the entire Yarrow Kingdom. Very few individuals would be foolish enough to turn down an opportunity to join such an esteemed sect. However, the notoriously high threshold for entry made most aspiring cultivators hesitate to even dream of such a possibility.
But Zayn, I know my own talents and aptitudes all too well. Even if I worked myself to the bone day and night, it would still be an incredible feat for me to even walk past the imposing gate of the Five Spirits sect.
She had deeply mixed feelings in her heart, but she knew she had to face the harsh reality. Amara might be 18 years old now, but her cultivation level had stubbornly remained at the 8th stage of the body tempering level. If in the past she had been fully occupied with taking care of Zayn's needs, now she was constantly busy managing the complex affairs of the Treasure Emporium, leaving precious little time for dedicated cultivation. Gently patting her frail shoulders, Zayn did his best to comfort and reassure her.
Don't worry yourself about such details, Amara. Look, as long as you are truly willing to join, I promise you that I will find a way to ensure you can enter the hallowed gates of the sect.
Really? Do you truly mean that, Zayn?
Of course I do. When have I ever lied to you or let you down, my dear friend?
Well, I must admit I'm still rather dubious, but your words have truly made my day brighter. Even if I still can't manage to go in for some reason, it doesn't really matter in the end. It's more than enough for me just to stay by your side and take care of you as I always have.
For many ordinary people, joining the Five Spirits sect might indeed be an impossible dream, but Zayn knew that there were actually more methods than one to become a disciple. In addition to passing the notoriously difficult normal test to become an outer disciple, there was another, lesser-known way to gain entry. That alternative method was to provide an enormous sum of 50,000 contribution credit to the Hall of Foreign Affairs in exchange for a coveted disciple token. As long as an individual held this precious disciple token, no matter who they were or how talented or untalented they might be, they could join the sect without question. However, the exchange conditions for this method were exceedingly harsh and restrictive. The first requirement was that they must already be a personal disciple of someone within the sect. The second was that each person could only have one single chance to exchange for it in their entire lifetime. Other than these conditions, they must also possess the staggering sum of 50,000 contribution credit. To put it in perspective, the value of 50,000 contribution credit was equivalent to 50,000 high-quality crystals, which was certainly no small amount by any means. Ordinary people might not be able to save so many precious crystals in their entire lifetimes. Fortunately for Zayn and Amara, during his recent exploits in the Ghost King Mountain, Zayn had successfully acquired a substantial number of crystals and valuable Ghost King flowers from those defeated disciples. In addition, he'd managed to procure even more resources from Samuel's well-stocked storage ring.
I still need to work even harder.
Zayn had stayed in Kintyre County for 10 eventful days. During that time, all the disciples of the Martell family, who were directly related to the treacherous Lyle, were swiftly and decisively eliminated. Armed with the crucial information he had obtained from Lennon, he'd released his long-suffering clansmen who had been unjustly imprisoned in the dungeon. However, Zayn made it clear that anyone who had gotten involved with the Broken Fang gang would be expelled from the Martell family. To prevent such a rebellious and destructive disciple like Lyle from ever appearing in the future, Zayn threw his full support behind Lennon to become the new patriarch. Because Lennon had previously served as the respected head of the family, he had deep and extensive connections. Therefore, there were many influential people eagerly supporting his return to leadership. On the seventh day, Zayn led a determined group of Martell family disciples to several neighboring counties, methodically eliminating all surviving members of the notorious Broken Fang gang. Finally, the 10th day arrived, marking the time for his departure and return to the sect. At the entrance of the Treasure Emporium, Otto, who had almost fully recovered from his injuries, came to bid them farewell.
Be careful on your journey, both of you. The roads can be treacherous.
Otto, I must thank you sincerely for taking such good care of Amara during this difficult period. Here's a bottle of special pills that I've personally refined during my stay. They're particularly suitable for foundation-level cultivators. Please, help yourself to them.
Delighted by the generous gift, Otto expressed a barrage of heartfelt thanks. He watched with a mixture of emotions as they mounted the panther and set off on their journey. Mindful of Amara's inexperience with such swift demonic beasts, Zayn had instructed the panther to moderate its speed for her comfort, as they didn't need to circumnavigate the treacherous Ghost King Mountain on their return journey. Their pace was even quicker than when Zayn had initially arrived. 7 eventful days later, they finally arrived at Zayn's residence within the sect. Thoughtfully, Amara's room was arranged right next door to Zayn's for her convenience and safety. After meticulously arranging everything and firmly instructing Amara not to wander around the unfamiliar sect grounds, Zayn made his way to the Hall of Foreign Affairs to submit his completed task. Vaniel was still diligently in charge of the hall. Upon spotting Zayn approaching from a distance, he greeted him loudly and enthusiastically.
Zayn, my friend! I haven't seen you in such a long time. Have you been engrossed in seclusion training recently?
It has indeed been quite a while, Senior Vaniel. But I was actually out on an important mission. Here, this is my mission card. Would you be so kind as to help me exchange it for contribution credits?
Zayn handed over a small token, which Vaniel carefully examined, saying thoughtfully,
Oh, I see. It's the rare Ghost King flower. How much have you managed to collect? Remember, you'll receive 100 crystals for every 3 pounds gathered.
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure of the exact amount. Why don't you count it yourself?
With these words, Zayn took out his storage ring and gave it a vigorous shake. Immediately, an astonishing number of Ghost King flowers tumbled out, quickly piling up into an impressive small hill right before their eyes.
Did you truly collect all of these by yourself? It's an incredible amount.
Vaniel was utterly stunned and could scarcely believe his eyes. Thinking his vision must be playing tricks on him, he moved closer to inspect the flowers carefully. To his amazement, they were indeed genuine Ghost King flowers.
Someone come quickly and weigh exactly how much Zayn has managed to gather.
After issuing the order, Vaniel then asked in a lowered voice, his tone tinged with skepticism.
Such an enormous quantity of Ghost King flowers? Did you really collect them all by yourself, Zayn? It seems almost impossible.
Of course! It's all collected through my own efforts. Why? Were you perhaps thinking otherwise?
Vaniel smiled awkwardly and wisely said nothing more. But Zayn couldn't help thinking to himself,
Yes, that's absolutely right. The robbery was indeed accomplished through my own efforts. Or does that somehow not count as my personal effort?
After the meticulous counting was completed, it was determined that there was a total of 60 pounds of Ghost King flowers. According to the established price of 300 crystals per pound, Zayn was set to receive a substantial reward of 1,800 crystals. However, just as the payment was about to be made, an angry, accusatory voice rang out, abruptly halting Vaniel in his tracks.
Hold it right there!
You absolutely cannot give him these crystals. They're not rightfully his.
Turning to look, Zayn was surprised to see it was none other than Willa, the very same person who had once fought against him in Ghost King Mountain and had been wounded in the arm by his sword.
These flowers were painstakingly collected by me and a group of my fellow apprentices. Zayn, this utterly despicable person, was merely stealing the fruits of our hard labor. That 1,800 crystals rightfully belongs to me and my companions.